He took a knee, he prayed, he got fired, and now his case is just days away from being argued at the Supreme Court. I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for liking and sharing these conversations. When you do, that makes you an unofficial member of the First Liberty Live team, so welcome to the team. You are part of how this works, this whole project, by liking and sharing. That helps get the word out to people that are friends of yours that could soon be friends of ours, so thank you from all of us for doing that. Last week, you heard from Paul Clement, who will soon be standing at the lectern at the Supreme Court of the United States arguing the case of Joe Kennedy. Paul is one of the top attorneys in the world. He's argued more than 100 cases at the Supreme Court, and let's just say he's really good at what he does, and it's the kind of representation that Joe Kennedy, as an assistant coach in Bremerton, Washington, could never dream of getting. But thanks to you and the work of First Liberty, he's able to have that level of representation at the Supreme Court. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from attorney Jeremy Dice, who's been working this case from way back early on in the effort. And I'm going to ask him how we can pray for Coach and how we can join together to support him at this critical time. But right now, I want to focus on the person at the center of the case. Who is Joe Kennedy? Where did he come from? Is he some preacher's kid? What made him such a fighter? Let's find out. Bremerton, Washington is an hour-long ferry trip across the Puget Sound from Seattle. Everything here is built around the Navy shipyard, both the town and the lives of the people who work here. Those people are hard-working and friendly, but for many it's a hard life without a lot of options. This is the high school field where our client, Coach Joe Kennedy, took a knee on the 50-yard line for that silent prayer. The school district fired him for that. But there's so much more to Joe Kennedy than that 15 seconds. There were years of being a coach just trying to bring the best out of his players. As a former Marine, if they got hurt, he'd just tell them to rub some dirt on it and keep going.
I would take my whole football team on a run, at least once, and we did the bridges. And I took them on the long way around, which is it's about 5 miles. Slow down when you get right up here to this ditch. So, being good citizens, there was a couple of shopping carts that were up here in this parking lot. And so we were going to return them here to the store. And we started running. And, I had to put one of my linemen in mine, and the other coach had one of the linemen in his, and we were racing across that. And I thought, I'm going to be able to go down that hill and just go out the other side. Well, as I went down into it, it was all muddy, and it buried it in, and it just flipped. And I'm holding on, pushing for the life of me, and it flips me, and the wheel came up, hits me right between the legs, flips me up over, and I landed right here in the middle of this road. No idea what happened. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And so Coach came over and picked me up, and he's like, you all right? And I was like, get me up. And I couldn't walk. And walked out in front of there, and the rest of the kids came up, and they were, what's wrong, Coach? And I was like, oh, just a little tumble. They were like, oh my God, you were flying, your legs were in the air. Take it right here. And I said, yeah. And so my coach said, he goes, you sure you're okay? And I was like, no, I'm not okay. And of course, my football team says, just rub some dirt on it, Coach.
What was it like growing up in Bremerton for you? What do you remember from this place?
Bremerton was a, kind of low budget town, I would say. A lot of hardworking folks. Nobody had a lot of money. Kind of a tough town. When anytime you're with a blue collar community, it's you got some rough times and a lot of good people, though.
A lot of people hear the prayer thing, if you will, the football game and the kneeling at the 50-yard line and all that, and they may make the assumption that you're a preacher's kid. It's not exactly true, is it?
No, quite the opposite. I was really one of those troubled youths. I was a bad kid. One of the kids I wouldn't want my kids hanging out with, and really had nothing going for me, and it took a lot of paths.
You found yourself living literally on the street when you were like 10, 11 years old. What was that like?
Well, when it first happens, you do it out of, anger, and I'll show them, and I don't need anybody else. But after a day of not eating, or it's pouring down rain, or it's 30 degrees outside, and you're out on the streets, and there's there's some really spooky people out here.
Yeah.
And it's scary for a kid.
What do you think set you off so much when you were so young?
Another left. I don't know. I don't know where all that kind of anger comes from. I mean, it seemed like everything was fine. I mean, I was mischievous, but I mean, things didn't get bad until it was right after my parents told me that I was adopted, and me and my sister were adopted, and that all kind of made sense, and it just like solidified that big wedge in our family, and we both came off the rails right at that point. And I don't know, 8, 9, or 10, somewhere in there when I was a kid, I needed a place to stay. I was homeless and no place to go, pouring down rain. So I walked my way up here to the church, and I knew that churches are a good, safe place to actually go. And it was all locked up in the middle of the night, so I kind of jimmied the door open and walked in, and it was probably the most terrifying night of my life. I think it was going to be a warm, safe place, and it was, but, all wood and candles burning and shadows, and it was probably the spookiest place on earth. And it's great to be able to find a place that is, relatively safe for a kid. I mean, what are you going to do when you're 10? I mean, where do you stay?
Part of your story is you grew up in Bremerton, had a troubled youth. It was rough.
Right.
You came back to Bremerton. Tell me why. What made you come back here? What did you hope to accomplish?
At first, I just wanted to get back to my roots, and I kind of wanted to, prove to others, this is what I've become. This is what I've done with my life, and that's kind of boring. You really realize why I'm back here is because there's a need in this town. The kids at the high school, I need to give back to my community, and I'm not equipped to help out in church realm or any of these other kind of things, but leadership and development of young men from the military was right up my alley, and it was the absolute perfect calling that I could give back to my community and actually kind of like do penance. It's how do you atone for a lifetime of causing pain to others. And I like to think that, I know that's not what it's all about, but it does make you feel good to know that you can reach out and help at least one kid who's going through something that I went through when I was a kid.
When you talk about them, I get the impression that in the eyes of the kids that you work with, the young men that you work with, you saw yourself a lot.
Too many times. I saw me very much so. And it breaks your heart to see kids that, a lot of these kids don't have a father, single family homes, mom's doing the best they can, and they need positive male role models, and you can't get it on TV, you're not going to get it home, you're not going to get it out in the school, where do you get it? Somebody has to reach into these kids' lives and be there for them. So that was really how I saw those kids. It was like, there's a chance that I could reach out and not be left and help these kids become something, so they didn't have to go down the roads that I went down.
You prayed, you got fired. This has been a 7-year battle, give or take. Now it's real. It's at the Supreme Court. We're just, it may be as soon as a few weeks from now. I mean, several weeks from now. What's it like being in the middle of that? I mean, you've really been carrying this for a long time. What's it like to be, in a sense, first and goal and see that here we are? You can use a perfect analogy of that. It feels like double overtime, and you're against your, cross-team rival. I think about we've been through court. I don't know what this is going to be our 6th time. Yeah. And after you get beat 6 times by a team, it gets old really quick, and you don't want to go for that last one and end up losing in double overtime. And that's the way I feel right now, is that it's about time it's heard by the right people, and it's a finale. We're going to get the answer, and whatever the answer is the answer. There's nothing else after. You talked about getting beat several times, but really, that was just the score along the way. The only score that really matters is the score at the end of the game, and that's what we're about to see.
Right, and I always put it towards my marathon when I would run marathons, and yeah, it's easy to run 24 miles. It's that last 2 miles when you see the sight. There's the end, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any closer, but it's just right there, and all the pain and all the endurance that you have to go through for that. Like 2 days in football, you train and train and train, and you fight and fight and fight, and finally we're gonna be at that Super Bowl, and we're going to see what happens at the end.
First Liberty has been alongside Coach Joe Kennedy since that night that got him fired for saying a silent 15-second prayer on the 50-yard line. Jeremy Dice is one of our attorneys at First Liberty Institute. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, Stuart.
Tell me what this case is really about.
This case is going to decide whether or not someone can be fired from their job simply because they can be seen engaged in private prayer. That's exactly what Coach Kennedy did. He walked out to the 50-yard line, took a knee, and maybe 15, maybe 30 seconds worth of prayer by himself at the 50-yard line, and that's why the school district fired him. If he can be fired for that, then every teacher, every coach, and every employee in the country really risks their job if they can be seen engaged in religious activity while on the clock.
Now, the Supreme Court is going to hear oral arguments on this. We now, because of COVID, we all get to listen in on those arguments, at least by audio. You don't get to see inside the courtroom. But as you're listening into those arguments, what are you going to be listening for?
Well, I'm going to be wanting to hear what the questions are and how far they're going to want to take this case. For instance, Bremerton offered Joe a couple different accommodations that really were not very accommodating at all. For instance, he could have gone into the school building is way over there across the field, up the hill to take that prayer up there. But I mean, that's a significant walk in which he's got to go inside and frankly send a wrong message. I'll talk about that in a second. Or he could have gone into the press box, which happens to be
right above our heads.
Right above us. But in order to do that, he'd have to walk outside, around the block, up the stairs, and into the press box, which doesn't make any sense either. Here's why neither of those accommodations would work out and why Coach was unwilling to accept either of them. That's because no religious activity needs to be hidden from view. And to send that message, especially to the students, would send a message that prayer is wrong and has to be hidden from sight. No one should be fired from their job for engaged in a 15 seconds worth of prayer, but they shouldn't be required to go hide who they actually are. And you've heard Coach say that even today about how important it is to send that message to students. Bremerton is sending the message that it is wrong to be seen engaged in prayer or seen to be engaged in any religious activity. If that's the standard, then the First Amendment means nothing. I want to hear the justices reaffirm the importance of the Free Exercise Clause in our Constitution.
Let's talk about the larger impact of this then. Who else would be impacted by a victory in Joe Kennedy's case, potentially?
Yeah, look, every teacher in the country, every coach that is employed by a public school, if they can be seen engaged in religious activity, which is what the Ninth Circuit basically held in this case, then their job is on the line. So if you've got a teacher that is bowing his head over his lunch in the cafeteria, then that teacher can be fired from his job. If you have a teacher wearing a crucifix in the classroom, well, she could be fired from her job. If you have a teacher that is wearing a yarmulke or another one wearing a hijab, all those are outward displays of religion that students can ably see. They should be terminated from their job as well. Even on the football field, what if the quarterback gets hurt and a coach goes to the center of the field with the athletic training staff and bows his head in silent prayer, praying that kid doesn't have a broken leg or torn ACL? Yeah. Well, that could be grounds for termination as well. The breadth of this case, is terrible on that side of it all. But on the other side, if the Supreme Court reverses what the Ninth Circuit held here and upholds the right for people to be able to be who they are in terms of faith while on the job, then that protection becomes much more robust. I think about a case back in the 1960s called Tinker v. Des Moines, which said that neither students nor teachers have to shed their constitutional rights when they walk through the schoolhouse gates. That should apply when it comes out here to the football field as well, and I want to hear that reaffirmation by the Supreme Court.
One last question for you. Was it worth it?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. I would do everything all over again. Because if people don't stand up and fight for what they believe in, I mean, what's the point? Why? How could I have been a coach if I told kids to give up if it got hard? Or you're going to lose, or it's going to cause you some pain. So just quit? No, I couldn't coach. I couldn't be that guy. So, yeah, absolutely. If anything, it shows the kids that, hey, you fight until the end. It doesn't matter what the score is, but you never stop fighting.
And special thanks to our colleague Jared Vesey, who shot a lot of that video. Of course, you recognize Jeremy Dice. He was in the video we just watched. He's here with us now, one of our attorneys here at First Liberty. Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Where are we right now at this moment in time? We're just days away from this case being heard at the Supreme Court. What's happening right now and what's about to happen?
Well, right now, all the important players are coming together to Washington, D.C. to get ready to go into the Supreme Court of the United States, to the extent that everybody's allowed to get into the Supreme Court right now, and getting ready to argue the case. So the attorneys are fine-tuning the arguments. Paul Clement, our lead counsel that's going to be arguing this case, he's argued a whole bunch there already. He's got his routine, and he's going through the final warm-ups, getting ready to go into the courtroom on Monday and deliver this argument and finally have Coach have his day in court. The rest of us are gathering as well in Washington, D.C. to support Paul's argument, to do the last-minute details that have to be arranged and wrapped up at the last minute. Coach will be there. He'll be outside the court after the arguments are made and hopefully have a chance. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk to the press afterwards. And I would hope come out with a smile on his face, saying that he's finally had the opportunity to have his day in court. And then we're going to wait for a few weeks until the court actually issues its order and its ruling to see whether or not Coach Kennedy is going to be allowed to return to the field, be with his team again, and after the game, go to the 50-yard line by himself and take that private prayer on one knee for 15, maybe 30 seconds.
What I really wanted to focus on in this episode is simply this. Joe Kennedy is a real person with a real story that goes far beyond 15 seconds on the 50-yard line. How can we pray for Joe, the actual real live human being at the heart of this case?
Yeah, look, I think you have to pray for Joe and Denise. Denise is his wife, and
Absolutely.
I think it's important for us to remember that this has been going on now since 2015. So if you do the math with me, that's almost 7 years that we've been in litigation.
Yep.
Coach Kennedy sued the Bremerton School District. The head of HR, as he'll tell you, was his wife. And so it's like suing his wife. And that has caused a lot of difficulty in some moments that he calls intense fellowship inside his own family, that trying to figure out why they were doing this and how long to stick to the fight. A coach is a brave person, and he's always been dogged to say, we're going to go forward with this to see it through to the very end. We're now at the very end of this litigation, at least we hope so. And thankfully, he's maintained that position because he understands what it means to fight for freedom. He did that as a Marine, and now he's continuing to do that even in the courts right now. That doesn't mean it's been easy. It's been very difficult on Coach. He's questioned himself not once, not twice, not 1,000 times, but almost every single day between when this first started to happen in 2015 and today. At any moment, he could have quit, but he's also battled those thoughts because he knows that if he quits, then that sends a message to his players that they should quit when things get rough as well. He can't do that either. And so this has been a tough time for Coach Kennedy. And in these last few minutes, I mean, I think everybody can understand what this would mean. After 7 years, almost 7 years of litigation, for it to all come down to one play, I mean, this is bigger than the Super Bowl and the final overtime on the 1 yard line. This is a big deal. And the tension is rich within his family. So I think, look, as you're thinking about Coach Kennedy and adding him to your prayer list, just completely cover him in the prayer that gives him peace and comfort. He's happy to fight. He has no problem doing that. That's been difficult at times, yes, but he's been determined to see this thing through to the end. Pray for that he and Denise will find the peace and resolution coming from this case. And of course, I think we ought to add in there too that God will be favorable on the justices and that they will rule in Coach's favor, that he'll be able to go back to that field one more time next year or maybe throughout the rest of his career and take a knee after the game is over at the 50-yard line by himself and have that prayer that he's fought so long to have.
And of course, next week, you and I and quite a few of the rest of us will be at the Supreme Court. We're going to do a special episode of First Liberty Live on Monday morning. The actual court time is 10 a.m. Eastern. 15 minutes before that, whatever time zone you're in, we're going to do a little preview of that. We'll have some conversation beforehand and then let you hear, because it's COVID season, the Supreme Court has done something unusual that they have not done historically, and that is we'll be able to listen in on the oral arguments as they are happening from the court. So we're going to do that 15 minutes or so, and then we'll pick up the audio feed from inside the courtroom and take you, at least your ears, inside the courtroom to hear what's going on there. So it's going to be an unusual day. Jeremy, anything else you'd like to share before I let you go?
Look, I think it's important for us to remember what we're asking for at the court right now. And it's the same thing we've asked for the last 7 years, which is that Coach Kennedy be allowed to go to the 50-yard line after the game is done by himself and take a knee in private prayer for 15, maybe 30 seconds. That's it. That's what this case is about. You may read other things that the other side says it's about. It's not. All that this is about is Coach Kennedy being fired from his job for doing a very simple thing, taking a knee in private prayer by himself at the 50-yard line, just like this picture shows, after the game is over. That's what we're asking for the court to reinstate him to his position to be able to go back and do. He is eager to go back and be on that field once again with his team.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the work you do.
Thanks for having me.
You know, Coach Kennedy has gotten the best, most expert legal representation for all of these 7 years. And his case has taken 7 years to get to this monumental moment at the Supreme Court. Here's something you need to know. All those hours of legal effort, all of the filings, all of the court appearances, and then more filings and more court appearances, they've all happened over and over again. It takes a lot to do that. A lot of attorneys have worked on this, but Joe Kennedy will never get a bill from First Liberty Institute for the services that have been provided to him. That's our model. That's how we function. He's not unusual in that. None of our clients get a bill from us. We're only able to do that because of the support, the faithful support of people just like you who care about these issues as much as we do, that it resonates with you as much as it resonates with us. So if you would, please look at on firstlibertylive.com, go up to the top of the page, there's a big red give button, and let me just say thank you in advance from all of us for your support. We will see you next time right here on First Liberty Live.